What's the difference between this image and this image? Let's get into it. Hey everyone, it's Corey with Real Filmmaking, and if you answered lighting to the question I just posed, then you are correct. Today we are talking about lighting, and particularly a lighting technique that I think will really help to elevate the look of your shots and honestly bring a lot more dimension and depth to them, and that is a technique called Far Side Keylighting, or some people also call it reverse keylighting, or upstage lighting. It has a lot of different names, but the concept is the same. So what is Far Side Keylighting? In its most simple terms, Far Side Keylighting is placing your object or your subject, whether it's a person or a product that you're shooting, in between your camera and the greatest source of light in a scene. This differs from standard three-point lighting because in standard three-point lighting, you put your greatest light source on the same side of your camera, and then you use fill lights, hair lights, other accent lights to help shape and bring contour and dimension to the shot. So why would you want to shoot with a reverse keylight setup? So like I mentioned earlier, this technique really helps to bring a lot more contrast and interest to your shot. Because you have this bright light source opposite your subject, you're naturally going to get a lot more interplay between the brights and the darks in your image. Another reason to use Far Side Keylighting is because the way the light naturally wraps around your subject, because it is on the opposite side, it helps create a sense of depth in your shot. When combined with motivated lighting, you can really make a scene look a lot more believable as to something that you would see in real life. And so what I mean by motivated lighting is when you have a scene and you have some light in the scene that motivates the reason for a light being there. You might set up a scene, and if you have the light on the same side of the camera, you're putting more light into the scene and the image, and it's bright enough that we can see it, but it doesn't feel natural like the way that we would see something realistically, because you would know like, oh, there's a light there, there's no reason for a light to be there. But when you have a scene where there's a window or there's a light in the frame, our brains trick themselves into believing, oh yeah, that light is providing the light that I see in the scene. And so having things in your frame to motivate the light is a huge technique that a lot of cinematographers employ. So how do you set up reverse keylighting? Well, it's actually pretty easy. You want to always make sure that you are shooting from the shadow side of your subject. Like I mentioned, your greatest light source needs to be opposite your subject, and so wherever you have it in the frame, make sure your camera is shooting from the opposite direction, and that naturally will create all the contour, the contrast, the depth that we're talking about. This technique, you can use it in a studio setup with lights, or if you're doing like a short film or whatever, that sort of setup, but it can also easily be used outside. You see this a lot in films. An iconic one is a backlit situation where you see silhouettes and things. That is using a reverse keylight. Granted, you're using the sun, but it's a huge light source, but you are shooting from the opposite direction. You're putting your subject in between the camera and the sun, and that is creating that natural reverse keylight effect that gives you the depth and the shadows and the contrast and all the good stuff that we love when we see those backlit scenes. You can use this in other places like with street lights or natural lights, in places where, again, when you combine this with motivated lighting, it can really make your scenes look a lot more believable, realistic, while providing that depth and that realism that you're looking for in your shots. So that's it about reverse keylighting. It really is a simple technique that you can start with now, and as you grow in more of your knowledge of cinematography and lighting, you can use different techniques in combination with reverse keylighting to really elevate the look of some of your shots. Ever since I've started using this technique, I have noticed a visible difference in the way that my shots look. Where my shots used to look really flat, or sometimes like if I didn't have something else in them, they would just feel kind of boring. Now, by implementing reverse keylighting a lot more, it's a very easy way to bring contrast, shape, interest into my images. So I hope you found this helpful. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to Real Filmmaking for more content coming about filmmaking, cinematography, magic lantern, all that goodness. And if you found this video interesting, make sure to check out my other videos about cinematography and different filmmaking skills. Until next time, keep making movies and watching movies, and I'll see you on Real Filmmaking.